Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and the great Jim Valliant is here to talk with us about a topic that's going to surprise you: the role of humor in living the good life. Jim, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Well, it's always great to be here, my friend.
So,
This is one of my favorite places to be, don't you know?
yeah, Jim, we talk about so many serious things, and in a interesting way, to me, humor is a serious thing
Yeah.
because I can't imagine living a good life without laughing, without having fun, without joking. I'm a ball buster extraordinaire. I love it. And I love when, someone breaks my balls. It's fun. And to go through life, with a somber look or taking everything serious, it's just a miserable existence. So the first thing I want to ask you about, maybe this will be a little controversial and we may piss some people off, but hey, what's new? So there's objectivists, and I'm not going to get into naming them, but a lot of objectivists seem to be without humor. Somebody, for instance, said to me that when you and I had our debate on values, and then I told a funny story in the middle of it, he said to me, we don't really care about your story. You could have done without that. Some people may like it, but objectivists don't, something along those lines. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, don't listen then, because I'm not going to stop being me. You know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do?
Well, see, it's so
Jim,
absurd that I laughed. It's so
yeah,
absurd that I laughed at what he said.
yes,
Objectivists
like,
don't like humor.
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
read an Ayn Rand novel without breaking out into laugh. Well, at least maybe with the exception of Anthem, but you can't read any of her big novels without having moments where you just break out laughing out loud. Humor is a big important part of it. Leonard Peikoff, the great objectivist teacher and lecturer, his advice. Yeah, I think he's even said this on tape, but he certainly told this to me more than once. He thinks that humor is a vital part of education and lecturing. You have to mix it up with some humor. He's he's got a natural sense of humor that goes with him, and but you're right. It's an important part of life. You know, Ayn Rand, even in the Romantic Manifesto, when she talks about the destructive nature of humor, she's still saying it's a virtue. It's a virtue, but it's not an unlimited virtue. So I think that the way the official objectivist position on humor is, it's a virtue, but be
yeah.
aware that it has a destructive element. That's all. We're
Well, you should
denying.
never. I want to give you an example.
Sure.
There's so much I want to talk about, so I want
Yeah.
to get back to something else in a second. But when I was incarcerated, there was all kinds of people around of different races, and my close friends and I would tell racist jokes to each other that were of different races, like that were breaking each other's balls.
Valid joke.
But the thing is this: what I did tell them is, look, if you want to make jokes to me, because I see a big difference between these. If you want to make jokes to me because I'm Jewish about Jews being cheap or Jews being smart or uncoordinated, whatever, I don't. That's funny to me. I'm not going to laugh at the Holocaust, right?
No.
Don't tell me Holocaust jokes. And for my black friends, listen, you want to joke about slang or whatever, joke about I don't know, chicken eating, whatever nonsense you want. That's cool, but I'm not going to make jokes about slavery, right? So I do think that when you're joking, some things are off limits. But now I will say this: if somebody doesn't know and they joke with me, I'm not going to get offended. I would just tell them, hey, listen,
Right.
because once you're joking with people, I think you kind of, unless it's just absurd, but
Right.
you have to make allowances for humor that crosses the edge. And then you just say, listen, that's too much, not for nothing. But what I wanted to mention to you is I remember somebody asked Ayn Rand a question about what objectivists would find funny. And her answer was, how the hell would I know?
She absolutely did not
No,
want
it's
to impose
ridiculous.
her psychology or values. Now, it's said that she enjoyed humor and that she laughed uproariously at her favorite comedians' jokes and so forth. She had humorist friends in Hollywood like Maury Riskind, who helped write Groucho Marx jokes, whose memoir is titled, I Shot an Elephant in My Pajamas, the name of Maury Riskind's memoir, because he was a humor writer. He wrote the screenplays to My Man Godfrey and to some important Marx Brothers movies. Ayn Rand knew humorists. She was friendly with them. She laughed at comedians' jokes. She, in the Romantic Manifesto, declared humor to be a virtue. And I dare you to read Atlas Shrugged without having moments where you just burst out laughing out loud, or The Fountainhead, reading some of those dialogues that Dominique has with the characters like Ellsworth or Peter or something, and you don't just burst out laughing. Humor is a very important thing. I think it's psychologically important. As you point out, I think it's important to living a good life. Now, the reason why humor is sometimes not cool is there's a very important point here. When we laugh at something, to a certain extent, we're denying its importance. Ayn Rand said that the standard of in epistemology, is it true? The standard in ethics, is it good? The standard in art, is it important? The standard in humor is sort of the inverse of the standard of serious art. You're denying the importance of something. You're saying, that's not important. You're blowing it off. So if someone were to make a joke about the Holocaust, or if someone were to make a joke about slavery or Jim Crow in the South or something, or someone having, being lynched in the South, that ain't cool, because it is, what you're saying is that that's not important. And no, it is important, and it is serious, and it's no laughing, as we say, the saying goes, the famous idiom, it's no laughing matter. And that, I think, is an important distinction. But you're absolutely right. If it wasn't for Jewish comedians, we wouldn't have all the Jewish jokes that we have. I mean, I think of Woody Allen in one of his movies. Is so funny. I went to a rabbi. I asked him, what the meaning of life was. He told me the meaning of life, but he told it to me in Hebrew. I told him I don't know Hebrew. Then he wanted to charge me $500 for Hebrew lessons. Now that's funny.
Speaking of Jewish jokes, let me just say, yes. So yesterday I was with Rosie Ginsburg and Mark Pellegrino. So we went for a walk, the three of us together. And I said to him, hey, did you hear the one about the two Jews and their friend who was an Irish actor? And Rosie, he's like waiting for the punchline. And I'm like, dude, come on.
Isn't it interesting, though, that people like African Americans or Jewish people are famous for their senses of humor? Because guess what? When you are a victim of discrimination, when you are living through, I think of, for example, the famous jokes from the old Soviet bloc. The physicist Peter Beckman wrote a whole book called Hammer and Tickle, where he collected jokes that were told in the old Soviet Union. And it's sort of black gallows humor, but those are the people that have a right to tell jokes. Look, they're laughing about what they're suffering. And I've known police officers who did grim work cleaning up a murder scene or some horrible crash, and or soldiers coming back from war. And that may strike people as odd, but talk about a way of trying to put things in context. If they didn't use humor, I think people say it's a psychological release valve for deadly serious things. On the other hand, that's no laughing matter. Sometimes horribly black humor is a psychologically appropriate thing if you're the one undergoing it. And in that moment, you need to spare your soul the belief that this is metaphysically significant, that this is what life is all about. And if you're, say, a soldier and that's what you're facing every day, or if you're a cop who's seeing murder scenes every day, you're a murder detective, you've got to remind yourself. I remember myself working in the child abuse unit was particularly rough on me. I could never laugh about it. And that may have been the reason why one day my wife said, you got to get out of that unit. Because to me, once I was drenched in this world of child abuse, I could neither laugh about it, but was still having its impact on me. I was getting a warped view of the universe. Child molesters are a small minority of people. This isn't the nature of the universe. And sometimes the black humor reminds us that this is relatively unimportant, even if it's deadly important in another context. I mean, literally deadly important.
Sure.
We still have to keep our context about our universe. Ayn Rand would greet people by saying, how is your universe? Instead of how you doing. And what an interesting thing, because we have to keep a metaphysical sense of the universe and what's really important and what our values are, and keep that view of humanity clear in our head. And for people who are soldiers in war, cops cleaning up horrible murder scenes, firemen, oh my gosh. I tell the story of how I psychologically had a hard time dealing with child abuse, and there are these paramedics and firemen who will tell me, well, what you needed to do, Jim, was get yourself to laugh about it in, you know, sort of a black humor kind of way. And I can understand that, but it is also a contextual thing. That is to say, in another context, that same humor which keeps the fireman or the paramedic sane because of what he's dealing with every day, it would be something that you and I might not laugh at all.
Yeah. Two things you just said, Jim. One is the role of humor in getting us through hard times, and two is context. For the first thing, you know, when you think of humor getting us through hard times, I remember one time when I was incarcerated, I had a disagreement with a really close friend of mine. So we, you know, the friendship seemed to me to be over. It thankfully wasn't, but it seemed like it was. And I was sitting down and I was wicked depressed. And another friend of mine came and said, "Oh, well, here comes your relief." And what was coming was a very, very funny guy. He says, and sure, and it made me feel better to be around someone that was funny. It just it took the burden off temporarily, yes, but it was like, I think you said, a relief valve, the psychological relief that I needed in that moment. But what you said about context, I think, is vital. Like I was talking about what my friends and I, where we're mixed races and we're telling racist jokes to each other. That's very different than if I'm going for a job interview and you know, my new boss whom I don't know, and I just bust out with some racist jokes because he doesn't have any context to know me or to know whether I'm serious or not. And it's like when you Mark and I are doing the show together, first of all, we're friends. We're not just three guys on a panel somewhere, right? That we're friends. You're going to have a different dynamic than if you're having three people that never met and are there to discuss a serious issue. So the context is vital as to what type of humor is appropriate, what you might think is funny. And my favorite comedian of all time is Don Rickles. Right? I love Don Rickles. Now the thing is, he's breaking balls left and right. Yeah, it's incredible, right?
To shreds.
Yeah, but everybody knows he's not serious. He doesn't really hate all the people. But it's so funny, like when he tells the guy, "Oh, you know, oh, Jimmy Stewart, yeah, you lived around the corner from me for 3 decades. I never liked you." You know, it wasn't actually Jimmy Stewart, but that's the type of thing he said.
Some of his most brutal jokes about people who were his closest friends.
Yes, again, the context matters because everybody understands. You don't just go and start making fun of somebody that you don't know and doesn't understand. You're at a comedy club.
He would say Frank Sinatra's with the mob or Dean Martin's the drinker, and you know there may be some truth to both of those things. But the point is, he could be a good friend of someone and still rib them about what everyone may already know about.
Oh, did you ever see, Jim, where he sits down? It was on the Tonight Show, and he tells Frank Sinatra, "Hey, listen, I got a message for you. Marco Mangananzo says hello." And Frank's there, "Oh, Marco Mangananzo, huh?" And he says, yeah. You know, Louis Capapricio, or so, you know, he says, you know, like he comes up with all these names. He's, you know, Rico is dead. 2 bullets in the head. And then he tells a joke. He says about a guy. He says he got into his car with your record on. Now he's a driveway. But yeah, you know, but obviously there's a difference there. But you know, you're making a ethnic jokes to a good friend of yours,
right?
And that's different. But it's just so good to be able to laugh. I mean, you know, these humorless people, objectivists and non-objectivists. I just mean like everybody, and for them,
way of going through life,
lighten up.
The inside where they don't laugh, where they never tell jokes, and they just, what a grim existence that must be on the inside. That's all I can think. It's important. It really, really is important. It helps us keep context. It helps us deny the importance of something. You know, Ayn Rand said, never laugh at yourself. And in one sense, I don't laugh at myself, but I will laugh at silly mistakes I make. Oh,
sure.
And I'll laugh at what I did. And what I'm saying is that I'm not laughing at myself. That's not me. That's not the essence of who I am. It was a dumb mistake. And so I'm denying it metaphysical significance by laughing at it. And the denial of metaphysical significance can run all the way from pretty harsh satire and ridicule, Ayn Rand's right. Humor can have a very destructive edge to it, or it can range all the way to, that's just not important. Blow that off. Don't
Yes.
consider that metaphysically significant.
We never had to think any of it, considered any of it important. What did John Galt say? Never had to take any of it seriously.
It's Dagny.
It's Dagny
in the
that
Valley. Yeah. We never had to take any of it seriously, did we?
Yes.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. And like you say, talk about laughing at yourself. And I've read where Rand said that, and I've disagreed with her, but the way that you say it makes more sense to me, and I get it. Like you don't want to make fun of the core of who you are,
right?
But I like to
laugh. Laughing denies a mistake's importance.
Oh, right. Geez. Yeah. The things that I do that are like, Brent used to make me laugh because he one time, I forgot what it was, but something was missing and he was really pissed off. He thought it was somebody else did it. And he said, then I realized it was me that misplaced it. And funny how it all became very understandable.
I was pissed off. Who the hell misplaced my whatever? Right? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, it was me. Oh,
I get it. Yeah, I get it. Right. Because, and the reason it's funny is because I think we all know that feeling, right? Where when it's somebody else we think did it. Like you ever driving down the street, look at this asshole, and then you realize you're the one at fault, and now I did have to get here. It's understandable. I do have to be somewhere at a certain time. It's dark out, whatever, right? But that's good to be able to laugh at like you said, the non-essentials is vital. So with that in mind, with the context set and the importance of humor, even philosophically, just for the good life, we need people to laugh. I got to ask you a couple questions. First, who's your favorite comedian and why?
Ooh, I think it would have to come down to two, but I've got two. I think it's Groucho Marx and Bob Hope. Bob Hope just cracks me up. Those road pictures, his stand-up act, the man's delivery, the man's timing, the man's comedy writers were just, if you get the cultural references, which are now pretty dated, but that's true sometimes of Groucho Marx's humor. But I love Groucho Marx. I love Marx Brothers humor. When Groucho Marx starts ripping into Margaret Dumont, the straight man was this lady normally in his movie. And they say that poor Margaret Dumont didn't even understand what was going on. She just sort of acted, and most of the time she didn't even get the humor. It may be unfair to poor Margaret Dumont, that actress who was always her straight man, that he was always ripping on in many of his films. But come on, Night at the Opera, Duck Soup, some of those films are just continuous laughter for me. Honorary mention does go to Woody Allen. I'm not endorsing the character of any of these people, by no means. But I am saying that I can't help but laugh at movies like Love and Death, Bananas, Sleeper, just the little humor, the way he puts it off. His books, Woody Allen's books are funny. If you've ever read Woody Allen's writing, that too is kind of a laugh out loud moment for me, almost always. And these are people whose, in two of those cases, I'm sure I disagree with their politics completely. So it's not a question of whether I agree with their moral character or their politics or anything else. They were just hilariously funny human beings who can always make me laugh. So Groucho maybe number one, Bob Hope maybe number two, and honorable mention to Woody Allen, including
first of all, if I can't laugh at someone's jokes because I disagree with their character, I'm going to be up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. I'm just going to be a humorless drum. But confession, I don't know.
Family movies. That dark humor, it just, for some reason, it absolutely cracks me up.
Jim, you're jumping the gun. We're going to get to the movies in a minute. You always do this to me. We start off, and then you anticipate what I'm going to talk about, and then you rush in.
Your mind, my brother.
You do. But I wanted to tell you about Groucho Marx. I'm woefully unfamiliar with the Marx Brothers, but I do know the joke, and I love it because I always reference this. There is in prison, there's a dynamic where people are on the internet, looking to write to prisoners, women that are attracted to prisoner qua prisoner, right? Not because they know the person or anything like that, just because
bad boys.
Yeah, you're a bad boy, you're a prisoner. And somebody, would ask me one time, or more than once, do you want one of these pen pals? And I said, no, I don't want to be a part of any club that wants me for a member. Right. And that's a Groucho Marx joke.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, then this gets to what you were saying earlier about laughing at yourself. I didn't mean it about Michael Liebowitz qua Michael Liebowitz. I meant the idea of somebody that's looking for Michael Liebowitz as a generic convict. I want to write to him because he's a convict. I want nothing to do with that kind of person.
Right.
Nothing. But that joke from Groucho Marx perfectly encapsulates that idea.
And for an individualist, it has applicability in more than one context. It's joining groups as such.
Oh yeah, you could. You got a point there. Okay, now that you already ruined it for everybody, let's get to the movies. Your favorite comedic movie. You could mention a few of them. We're playing it fast and
Mel
loose here
Brooks'
tonight.
Young Frankenstein.
I hated it.
You hated it. Well, what'd you think of Blazing Saddles?
Never seen it, but I do love the line. Where the white women at?
Oh, talk about racial humor. It's loaded with some absolutely hilarious racial humor. It's about racism. So they're making jokes and Gene Wilder, what a hilarious guy he was too. But I liked Young Frankenstein. It's because I liked those old horror movies. I'm familiar with the original Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein. And if you're familiar with those old films and know them and love them like I do, there's something about it. I'm not saying that those films are a worthy part of my childhood, because those old Frankenstein movies from Universal back in the 30s, they were a big part of my childhood. But I'm precisely because they were a big part of my childhood, when I see them being ridiculed and sent up in a clever way, that can cause me to laugh. Like I say, I very much like Addams Family type humor, whether it was the old TV show in the 60s or the new movies. Addams Family type dark humor, Morticia, the mother, is talking with Grandmama in the kitchen, and Wednesday Addams is coming through with this meat cleaver. And Morticia says, "Is that for your brother?" "I don't think so." She takes it away, hands her an even bigger one. Okay, I don't know why. That just cracks me up. I love the dark humor of Addams Family movies. Because, again, it's a denial of the importance of something. Because if I was serious about that, I would have to be, oh my God, she's handing her daughter or child a bigger meat cleaver to slash her brother with. Now, on the face of it, that's disturbing, right? They'll even make a joke like that. The psychiatrist in one of the movies is, going to say, "Are you ready for something? Is it for me to tell you about Fester? Is it disturbing?" And she'll say, I forget what the word was, "Deeply," and they lean in forward. The point is that it's twisted, and it's what we're doing there is we're denying. I think this is my underlying point about humor that I started with. What we're doing in it is we're denying the metaphysical significance of something. That would be so far over the top that it would be absurd to take seriously. And I'm not going to take what they're saying seriously. And laughter is a way of blowing off taking that seriously. That is not important in life. That is not what life is about. I would never talk to a child like that.
I hope not.
Right. But I laugh precisely because you would never talk to a child like that.
Have you ever seen Bringing Up Baby?
Oh, Bringing Up Baby. Oh, and by the way, I love all those screwball comedies. His Girl Friday, Bringing Up Baby, My Man Godfrey, you name it.
Philadelphia Story.
The Philadelphia Story is good. It's a little more sophisticated, of course, but I really love His Girl Friday with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. I really love Bringing Up Baby with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. And they did a remake kind of in the 60s with Barbra Streisand and Ryan O'Neal called What's Up, Doc? I really highly recommend What's Up, Doc. It was the first film in which Madeline Kahn was, and she did the character.
I think I may have seen it. But the thing what I loved watching Bringing Up Baby is because it's an old movie. And you can see a lot of the themes, and I don't remember them now, that are even practiced today in modern comedy. And you can see it taking place. I think that movie came out in the 50s. But what a
Bringing Up
funny
Babies
movie.
in the 30s.
30s?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, what a funny movie. What a great, great movie. Fantastic. I love, have you ever seen Trading Places with Eddie Murphy?
Oh, yeah. Hilarious film.
Yeah. I love Eddie Murphy movies. I love that. I love the Golden Child. I thought was hilarious with Eddie Murphy.
Right.
But a movie I really like, I don't know if I could pick a favorite, but Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Michael Caine and Steve Martin. They're con men. And there's a
Martin, and I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh my God. So there's a scene. Let me just tell you this scene of the movie. It's so funny. They're trying to scam people. So Steve, and they're in a competition. So one of Steve Martin, he decides that he's going to dress up like a wounded vet, right? They're trying to, each of them's trying to scam this woman, and whoever gets to scam the woman wins the competition. The other one has to leave, I think. So he dresses up like a wounded vet in a wheelchair. And so Michael Caine says, I know how I'm going to counter that. And he decides that he's going to pretend to be his therapist. Right. So he goes over to him and he's telling the girl, no, he needs tough love. This is all psychological. There's nothing physically wrong with him. And he's got the, a switch, and he's taking it across his legs. You don't feel that. And he's hitting him. And then he's dancing with the girl in front of him, and he's saying, come on, get out of that chair and walk. And there's a whole bunch of soldiers there at the bar or whatever, the dance club. So they see Michael Caine do it. Now they obviously don't know what's going on. So they end up kidnapping Michael Caine. They're gonna work, get out of the chair, huh? All right. But there's so many moments like that in that movie. Okay. I think you and I are going to have a lot of agreement here. Favorite sitcom?
Ooh, favorite sitcom. Well, Seinfeld is really high up there. But I like Frasier. I like Seinfeld. I like I said, the old Addams Family sitcom. And I'm sure you're going to remind me of something where we're going to agree.
Well, Seinfeld, to me, nothing beats Seinfeld.
Seinfeld,
the genius of that show is just absolutely
and I'll
incredible.
catch Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh my goodness, hilarious!
That's hilarious too. I find that very frequently very funny. He's a funny guy. Again, my politics is very different from Larry David's, but the man never fails to make me laugh out loud.
That is a funny show. I'm watching an episode one time, and it was, oh my God, it was so funny. He and his buddy, I think his buddy was in the hospital. I'm not sure. I think so. His buddy's in the hospital, his agent. And Larry, he runs into an ex-girlfriend of the buddy. And the girlfriend says, oh, it didn't work out. And Larry says, why not? She does this. And so Larry goes in and tells Jeff, yeah, she told me why it didn't work out. And he says, the guy says, what happened? And Larry says, well, she says, and Jeff says, oh, no. and Larry says, what is that? What do you mean? And Jeff says, big vagina. Big vagina. That's the problem. So now they start talking about this, and they're like, yeah. And Larry says, yeah, where do they get off with this all the time? They're getting away with murder. He says, common sense will tell you, if there's all these small penises out there has to be big vaginas. There just has to be. They're getting away with murder.
Why is it that the vagina never gets to
right? So now Larry goes out and he sees the nurse again, and he starts talking to her. He says, yeah, he told me, and she says, oh my God. But it's just like the conversations that these people have are just so crazy stuff, because it's all real stuff.
You wouldn't say, with Larry David, he's doing things that you would never do, and he's saying things that you would never say. He's breaking the social convention.
Right.
And just that liberty of breaking the social convention and seeing the consequences play out is just hilarious. It really is.
It really is, because it's very realistic. Like the stuff that they do, it's almost like they take normal scenarios where nobody says what's on their mind, but they have the characters actually say what's on their mind. And that is, it's gold.
If you think about it, the people in Seinfeld are not particularly good people. I
No, they're
mean,
horrible.
the last episode is a review of they're on trial, right? And they bring in all this character evidence, and it's all the characters from all the past episodes, some of their best episodes, where they're like really doing dubious things. You know, the woman in the wheelchair, they go through all the different things that they've done, which are not particularly virtuous. So
No.
what are we doing when we turn on TV and we're laughing at bad people being bad? What we're doing is, as I say, we're denying metaphysical significance to it. And we're laughing at them when they have to face up to the consequences. This was probably Aristotle's view of comedy. We are ridiculing vice, said Aristotle. We have, thanks to a palimpsest found in our lifetime, actually, we have an outline, an epitome of
Jim,
Aristotle.
we're doing an episode on humor, and you bring up palimpsest.
Well, we for a long time, all we thought we had was Aristotle's theory of tragedy, tragic drama. But it turns out that his lost book on comedy, we may have an outline for, and that's what Aristotle's idea of comedy was. We're laughing, we're ridiculing vice, and Seinfeld is a great example of what Aristotle's point is. Comedy is taking vice and giving it the appropriate ridicule. And very frequently, that's what humor is. Humor is laughing at bad people facing the consequences of their screw ups. I can think of many comedy shows that are like that. It's not just Larry David written, but there was a TV show on that. The first few episodes were good. It didn't sustain its quality, but Sunny in Philadelphia.
I've never watched it. I've heard of it.
It's pretty funny because these are rotten human beings, and we're seeing rotten human beings get their comeuppance in effect, and it is enjoyable to see rotten people get their comeuppance. Now Aristotle would say it doesn't have the the morally edifying quality, say, of epic or tragedy. Right? He definitely had a hierarchy here, I think, but nonetheless, it is perfectly okay to laugh at vice getting its comeuppance.
Jim, one role, and I never thought of it until just this minute, that comedy can play is it can also help to introduce serious topics. And there's two that's come to my mind. I'll get your thoughts on that, and then we can wrap up. But they're both from Archie Bunker, from All in the Family.
That was
great show.
That was a funny TV series.
And one of them was on where Meathead, he brings over his buddy that is a draft dodger. He went to Canada. And Archie has a guy over whose son was killed in the war. And when Archie finds out that this guy, is a draft dodger, Archie just goes sick on him, And he says, and the guy, he said, this guy's son died. And the guy says, can I say something? And Archie said, yes, you can say something. And the guy basically said, I'm not going to get it exactly, but, my son's gone and nothing's bringing him back. And I wish he were here today. And, I'm glad that this young man is here today. And it was just such a powerful thing. But the whole table is set for that based on the Archie Bunker character, the humor, the bigotry, everything. And then it comes in with the seriousness, and it worked. And there's another episode, and I think it might not have been All in the Family. It might actually been Archie Bunker's Place. I'm not positive. But Sammy Davis Jr. was on, and he had been on earlier where he took a ride from Archie. And someone says to Sammy, do you not see what this guy says? Do you not see who he is? Blah, blah, blah. And Sammy says, yes, I know what he says. And what I'm telling you is there's a difference between what he says and who he is. And I think that that's a lesson that a lot of us can learn is when you're judging a human being, and I believe firmly, as you know, we need to judge people. But we need to judge people as a whole, right? You can't just look at someone and say, well, this person's crass or this person's personality is off. It rubs me the wrong way. When you're judging a person, everything needs to come into play, because Archie ultimately was a nice guy usually, right? He wasn't, he was a bigot.
He was a bigot, and and he had, antediluvian ideas about many things,
Right.
when he would never really hurt anyone is what it came down to.
Right. And I just want to tell you, Jim, a joke that I saw on Archie one time that had me cracking up. Archie's in an elevator with a black guy and a Puerto Rican guy, right? So the Puerto Rican guy, Archie gets them all wound up, and the Puerto Rican guy says to Archie, I'm equal to you. And Archie says, equal to me? You ain't even equal to him.
See, what we're doing there is we're denying the importance of race.
Yes. Yes, that's what
We're laughing
those shows were
at
about.
racism itself.
Right.
Right.
George and Archie George Jefferson and Archie were ridiculous.
Yes.
And that's what made it funny.
Did
you ever see Did you ever see where George goes to the Klan meeting?
Oh my God, hilarious! George goes to the Klan meeting? No, I don't recall.
Okay, so there's been burglary, and I said I was going to let you go, but I got to tell you this one. There's been a rash of burglaries in the building. So somebody invites Tom to go to the meeting about the burglaries in the building. At least Tom thinks that's what it's about. So Tom goes, and Tom's telling them all, George is late. You guys are going to love George. He doesn't know it's a Klan meeting. So George, he gets there, and he's on the stage, and he says, I'm right here with you. We need to get these people out of the building. And they're looking like, what the hell is going on? And George is going on and on. But then what ends up happening is the Klan guy has a heart attack, and George gives him CPR. And the guy's son is just so grateful. The guy said, I wish you would have let me die, something like that. But the guy's son was so grateful that his father was alive. He realized in that moment, the race of the person that saved him is irrelevant. So there was always a good message mixed with the humor.
You juxtapose dismissing the importance of something as an introduction to saying something very and very important.
Jim, you have an amazing way of doing
the importance of that second part.
I got to tell you, I'm so happy we did this episode, because your ability to bring these ideas together and to actually distill what's occurring, because I think that most people that watch that's the process, right? That's what's happening, but they're not identifying it. It's almost like when you're forming concepts, right? We're automatically emitting measurements, but it takes an Ayn Rand to come along to show you what's actually occurring.
I read Aristotle, I've read Ayn Rand, I've read some smart people, and I've heard some good comedy, and I've introspected about what it is that I find funny. And to that extent, or maybe I do know what's going on, but people do that. I'm not saying people do that. I'm saying people do that. Introspect. When you find something funny, when you find something moving, take that opportunity to learn about yourself. Because when you have an emotional reaction, that is always a learning opportunity about yourself.
Jim, you know who I learned that from?
Who'd you learn that? Oh, well, yeah.
All right, Jim, what a great episode. What a great discussion. I kept you over time, but I don't care. It's worth it.
I don't either.
Where can the people find you?
Well, I'm active on social media, particularly Facebook. I'm there, James Stevens Valliant, answering questions just about every day. Hit me up. I do podcasts here for the Rational Egoist, and sometimes I'm on the Capitalist Corner, which you can catch every day just about with Mr. Michael Liebowitz here and Mark Pellegrino. When Mark is standing you up, I'm off. I'm often there to fill in for you, and I'm happy to do it because you're a wonderful guy.
Yes, when he stands me up. That's a good way. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
it's a good way to put it. I'm driving 3 hours to New York. He's on a nice cushy plane, and he's going to compare that we
in first class.
Yeah, we both have to travel. That's what we're doing. We're traveling. Jim, I love you, brother.
I love you too.
For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Till next time.